And, and a warm welcome to all of you joining us for the first of our three online lunch sessions. Today, we will focus on self-leadership. I'm really looking forward to working with you on this topic today. And although I will be in the center of the screen and we won't have any breakout sessions, which is a bit of a challenge for me because I would love to be in touch with you and to resonate with you, I will try to make this short session as interactive and interesting for you as possible. And before we start, I would love to introduce myself shortly. So I'm Meike. I live in Berlin and I joined MDI last August as a learning and development consultant and an executive trainer. And since August 2024, I've also been team lead for our MDI Germany team. Although I'm still quite new to MDI, I really love working here and I'm looking forward to bringing my almost 20 years of experience in training, leadership, and leadership development to this exciting place. Prior to MDI, I spent 2 years with a German fintech group as an executive trainer and 5 years as an HRD manager with a global American company. However, I started my career as a research assistant, editor, and university lecturer in theater studies and philosophy. And it was there that I found my personal purpose to create and hold spaces where people can be curious about themselves, others, and their own organization. Find the courage, as Brené Brown puts it, to rumble with their own vulnerability and thereby find their own path and their own purpose and unfold their full potential. And in my opinion, self-leadership plays a big part in that. To start, I would really love to invite you to share with us why self-leadership is maybe important for you, why you're here today. So what do you think? Why is self-leadership playing an important role, maybe also in your leadership experience? We would love to invite you to join us on Mentimeter. You can either have the QR code with your camera, or you can open the Mentimeter page and put in the code. So we would really love you to share with us why you are thinking self-leadership is important to you. And hopefully it will appear immediately on the presentation. So, anyone? Great. We received the first answers. So learning how to help myself and others, stress management, further ideas, to be a role model. I think, yeah, especially in leadership, this is really important. And as a basis of effective and good life, maybe also to have work-life balance, be a good role model on how to deal with emotions. This is where everything starts. Yes, that's true. And I will come back to that in a few moments. To be able to lead others. And I think, yes, it's also really the basis for leading others to be able to lead yourself, being humble with myself and productive for change, always willing to learn more. Great answers. Thank you so much for sharing this with all of us. And to proceed, I would love also to share with you what is my why and why I am so interested in the topic of self-leadership. So in the beginning, I would say it has several levels. It has a lot to do with my own biography and the things that have happened to me. And because of my biographical journey and the challenges it has brought me, I have always felt that I have an intense but nevertheless demanding relationship with myself, from which I've also suffered. And therefore, I had the deep desire to understand myself better and to change something. And so I have been concerned with philosophy, art, psychology, and other things. And over time, I came to understand that I may not have the power to change things that happen to me or that happen on the outside, or maybe also not the behavior of others, but I can choose how I want to respond to it. And even though it's been 20 years, I still remember the moment I first came across Albert Ellis' ABC model, because I think that's when I first understood that emotions just don't happen to me, but that there are often beliefs behind them that I can change. And at the same time, I was able to learn that my ability to respond does not mean that I have to adapt to everything, or that I have to make the uncertain and uncontrollable things in the outside manageable through myself, but that it was about rumbling with vulnerability and saying yes or no consciously. And when I moved into the field of leadership development, I realized that conscious leadership is a huge part of that, and that it has a huge impact on leadership in general. Because the ability to be in touch with ourselves, our vulnerability, our fears, and all of our emotions, and to deal with them, has a huge impact on how we can be in touch with others and with our organizations, and that has a huge impact on our ability to lead. One example may be when I was in a leadership role, I was kind of co-responsible for transforming a conflict between two colleagues. And as with all conflicts, both were involved and both had engaged in behavior worthy of criticism. But I was extremely triggered by the behavior of one of the parties, because it reminded me of something that had hurt me deeply in the past. And it was such hard work to make myself aware of that and not to react from that trigger. But if I hadn't, I would have made the situation worse and not better. And I think at the same time, it is also really important that we do not try to solve, for example, structural problems through the self or self-regulation. This would also be dysfunctional and detrimental not only to the individual, but also to the whole organization. And therefore, I think we need to consider both sides. So on the one hand, really develop our ability to regulate ourselves and to respond consciously. And on the other hand, also thinking about which challenges may be also systemic or structural. So which kind of response do we need for a specific situation? And considering this, the architecture of MDI's key dimensions of leadership resonates deeply with me. So if we think of development as the drop that falls into the water, self-leadership is the first circle that drops this development, or that this drop or this development creates. And from there, it draws ever wider circles, always deeply influencing other aspects of leadership. It influences how we connect with our employees, colleagues, and leaders. It influences how we lead and develop teams. It influences how we lead and design our organization and interact with our environment. And self-leadership itself has different aspects. A more task-oriented aspect of self-management, where I organize myself according to a purpose, a vision, and goals, where I manage my time and plan my tasks. But also it has this aspect that focuses more on our connection to ourselves, our emotional regulation, how we motivate ourselves, or how we face and deal with our fears. And it also touches on the field of self-learning, which is about understanding our own strength and areas of development, lovingly accepting our vulnerability and finiteness, but still striving for development. And while I'm today talking more about the self-leadership part, tomorrow we will hear a little bit more regarding the part of the you, and on Wednesday regarding the part of organization by Gunther and Marina, who will share their insights on lateral leadership and also on AI. So with that said, my focus for today will be more on the aspect of self-relationships, so also on touching the aspect of self-learning. And I will try to cover three topics in this short session. So on the one hand, I will focus on self-relationship as the basis for connection with others. And secondly, I will more focus on how conscious self-leadership maybe not control, but strengthen our ability to respond to our own emotions, unexpected events, the behavior of others, and also our environment. And thirdly, I will focus on how conscious self-leadership can enhance our ability to make better decisions. And I would love to start with a short video of Brené Brown to further emphasize this need to connect with ourselves in order to connect with others. So this video is a little bit older, but I think it makes it so clear why we need the courage to connect with ourselves in order to connect with others. And as you watch the video, perhaps you can reflect on when it is easy or difficult for you to connect with yourself, or if you can remember a moment when a deep connection with yourself was deepening another relationship. And thereby, I will now share the video. Sorry.
So what is empathy and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, I'm down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. I had it, yeah. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver line it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. At least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
So that was the short video of Brené Brown. And I would really love to invite you, as I said before, let's maybe think about when it is easy or difficult for us to connect with ourselves, or especially with those vulnerable parts that don't feel comfortable, when it is easy or difficult for us to share this and to connect with this. And when did it maybe work for you? When were you able to connect with yourself and thereby enhance a relationship you had? It would be really great if you would share something in the chat. So when it is easy or difficult for you, or also when it worked out and when it really enhanced a relationship. While you are writing in the chat, hopefully, I can maybe share two short stories where I felt that it was difficult, but when it nevertheless worked out. So maybe a more personal and a more professional example. The personal example, my boyfriend had several surgeries last year, and it was really difficult and painful for him, but also for me at times with all the day-to-day things I had to do. And there were moments when I realized that I was getting impatient because I was so caught up in my daily life and all the tasks that came with it, that it was affecting my ability to connect with him. But when I stepped back and connected to myself and to the pressure I felt, and also to the time back when I had a difficult surgery years ago and all the anxiety and uncertainty that came with it, I felt that I could relate completely different to him and that we had a completely different connection. And another example in a more business related context was when I had to conduct a leadership workshop on employee engagement for our clients. And this workshop included a questionnaire as a pre-work. And as a result of the questionnaire, we discovered dissatisfaction among the managers that no one has noticed before. And this dissatisfaction stemmed from a change project, and the results of the questionnaire forced us to change the content of the workshop and to address this dissatisfaction, anger, and insecurities. And in the beginning, the top management was very afraid of this because they were afraid of opening Pandora's box and not being able to catch anything that came up. But things turned out completely different because they were courageously facing their own fears. Everything important could be discussed, and the team cohesion really strengthened. And instead of frustration going underground and leading to gossip, conflict, and disagreement, something really nice came out. So let me see if you have maybe also shared some stories. Oh, thank you, Martin. Stay open and true to yourself and then bond the other person. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. You can also contribute further if you like to during our session. Maybe you remember something or something comes up. So I think in a world that expects us and especially leaders to handle and manage things, it is not easy to accept uncertainty, vulnerability, imperfection, and uncontrollability of ourselves and others. And I think this fundamental challenge is compounded by our programming. So we are kind of wired to look for threats to our survival and to react automatically when we perceive a potential threat. According to Heidi Hanna, founding partner of the Academy for Brain Health and Performance, and also fellow and advisory board member of the American Institute for Stress, we have 5 times more neural connections for fear than for reward, for example. However, because our limbic system, the second oldest part and emotional center of our brain, not only processes stimuli much faster than our conscious mind, but also overrides higher brain functions to help us survive, we tend to react automatically. And because our brains are unable to distinguish between a threat to our physical survival and a threat to our ego, as the conscious leadership group puts it, when we react automatically, we often do ourselves and our relationships with others no favor. So why is this important to conscious self-leadership and self-regulation? Understanding this helps us understand why we sometimes react impulsively or emotionally in challenging situations. By learning to recognize when the brainstem or the limbic system is dominant, we can pause, reflect, and consciously engage the prefrontal cortex. So this is critical for self-regulation, allowing us to respond in a way that is aligned with our goals and values, rather than reacting out of habit or out of stress. For example, when we are faced with high pressure decisions, self-leadership involves recognizing emotional responses from the limbic system, calming yourself, and consciously shifting to the prefrontal cortex to think strategically. This is maybe kind of the essence of conscious self-leadership, especially in complex or stressful environments. And if we have this in mind, maybe sometimes things happen to us that we cannot control or prevent. But when we can work on, or what we can work on, is our response ability, our ability to respond consciously, as the Latin American executive coach Fred Kaufman puts it. We can train ourselves to widen the space between stimulus and response to avoid reacting from a trigger and to consciously choose how we want to react. And I think there are several short and long-term ways to develop these skills. For example, deep and conscious breathing reverses the physical process triggered by the cocktail of fear-inducing hormones that our limbic system reverses when it feels a threat. Regular meditation can cause our amygdala or our alarm center in the limbic system to shrink over time. And gratitude can help us to focus more on the positive and less on potential threats. And seeing the world from someone else's perspective strengthens our much needed ability to see the world from a multiple viewpoint. So for me, personally, mindfulness, gratitude, and also this shift in perspective are what helps me to maximize the space between stimulus and response. And I would be really interested in what you are doing to maximize your space between stimulus and response. And again, I would love to invite you to join us on Mentimeter and to put in your best practices. Hopefully everything works out. I'm really curious about your responses. Maybe I can see if we can already see that in Mentimeter itself. Okay, so for some reason it does not work here, I think, but you can also share within the chat if you like, what are you doing to maximize your space between stimulus and response? What are you doing to calm down? Thanks a lot, Henriette. Great. Fantastic. Yeah, thank you. Change posture also, I think, is a great thing. Drink no alcohol is also great. Meditation, nature, fantastic. Thank you so much for all these great insights you're sharing with us. Then we're coming closer to the question of is that helping me when I think of leadership as also being responsible for decisions? So when I think about connecting with myself and connecting with others with their vulnerabilities and uncertainties, does that help me in the first place to lead? Maybe it is making things more difficult because it becomes much more difficult to make a decision if I can see all these different perspectives, and if I see them or if I view them really seriously. It also does not make it easier, but probably it will help us to make nevertheless better decisions. Because, for example, I think things won't get easier because if you have, like me, an internal driver, like make everyone happy, it is really difficult if you can see different perspectives and if you can feel different perspectives. And you know that whatever decision you're taking, you maybe cannot make everyone happy. And I think this is also something that is although it is difficult, it is very normal for organizations because we process external complexity internally in an organization, and therefore we will always have conflicting perspectives. We will always have pros and cons, and every decision probably can be criticized, and we won't be ever able to please everyone. And that is also something we need to consider in self-leadership when it is about leadership and making decisions, that it is something very valuable, but not easy, that we need to do. And I think what we can do is to consider and include as many perspectives as possible, and then make the best possible decision, and also take responsibility for the consequences of this decision. And with that said, I would love to, at the end, introduce you shortly, and therefore I will also move to to mural, because here I can show it a little bit better. When we are thinking about decision making and self-leadership, I think self-leadership is about embracing your inner plurality. And Friedemann Schulz von Thun developed a great metaphor or model that serves as a tool to help us map and reflect on our inner plurality. By listening to and integrating all voices of your inner team, we strengthen our ability to communicate more coherently, also to make hopefully better decisions and to realign. So if you want to work with the inner team, and I will also in short introduce you to my own example, I think the first thing that you will need is a question or a challenge that is difficult for you, for which you do not have a unified perspective, or in which you may feel an inner conflict. And the next step would be to visualize these different perspectives that you have on the situation, which may be in conflict with each other. And we try then to perceive who is trying to speak. So which voices, which messages do we hear? And we give these voices a name that characterizes them, and also a key phrase that this part of us, this member of our inner team would say. So for example, if we have someone, and I feel this character very often, that is a perfectionist, maybe he or she would say 90% are never enough. And so we can then integrate or map all these voices, all these characters, all these different perspectives that we can feel inside ourselves regarding a decision. It is also important or a good thing to pay attention to which voices come first and which maybe come a little bit later. Also, if there are louder or more quiet voices, and if there are any voices that you prefer to hear over others. And once we have visualized this, what we can also do is to analyze a little bit deeper who of my voices regarding a decision is against this decision, who or which voices are more in favor. And we can think about the resources each team member is connected to and what emotions, for example, arise in relation to different team members. And what we will also need is the inner team lead, the leader of the inner team. He or she would represent your inner leader, the part of you that is able to listen and to integrate all those different voices within. His or her role is to facilitate constructive inner conference to ensure that all perspectives, whether fearful, courageous, rational, empathetic, are heard and considered. And so the team leader helps to balance these voices, to foster collaboration, and to guide them toward a coherent decision and also actions. And if we have a look on my example, I use this inner team very often for, is almost every time when I'm facing a conflict, the decision of whether to address it is a difficult one for me, involving several antagonistic members of my inner team. And when someone has a different perspective, the first thing that emerges in my inner team is a curious, empathetic team member who's interested in the other perspective or needs. But as soon as I realize that our perspectives or needs are irreconcilable and that I need to enter into a conflict, fear sets in. And my greatest fear is that what I bring up will escalate and maybe permanently damage our relationship. So this fearful team member brings in two new team members that he or she tries to instrumentalize to find a solution that does not involve addressing the conflict. So there's the self-denier and the perceived strong one. If I pretend that my needs or my perspective are not so important and that I'm strong enough to endure the situation, I can avoid addressing any conflict. And since these team members used to be functional in a specific situation, but are no longer functional, the angry one comes in and speaks up, not understanding why her needs and her perspective should not be seen or heard. Then, late, more quiet and shy, two more voices emerge, knowing that it is important and useful to address conflicts in order to transform them, the rational one and the constructive one. The inner team lead now has to listen to and integrate all these voices to make sure that the wisdom of all these voices is appreciated and integrated. We need to take the fearful voice that knows loss seriously, show it our empathy, connect it maybe with the more curious, rational, and constructive parts in us. Because maybe the situation is different now than when the fearful part experienced loss. And we need to use the energy of the angry part of us that knows that self-denial and a misunderstood strength won't help us in the long run, and maybe invite two new players, courage and confidence, that have trust in our own abilities and the relationships we are building. And then we are more likely to make the right decisions. And that was one model or instrument I wanted to introduce to you, to show how self-leadership and this tool and self-reflection can help us to make better decisions in leadership context. And with this said, we're slowly coming to an end of this first session. And I would really love to ask you, because I couldn't interact that much with you, if you have any questions at the end. And I would love to give some room and space for all the questions or maybe all the comments that you have. It seems as if hopefully everything was was really clear. And with that said, I just want to maybe wrap up and conclude what I've tried to explain and to work on today. So I think what I tried to is to focus on the why self-leadership is so important for leadership overall. And I tried, although self-leadership has different aspects, like, for example, self-management, self-learning, self-regulation, we tried to focus more on the self-regulation part and had a look into why it is so important to connect with yourself, to also connect with others. Why it is so difficult, also because we are wired to have a lookout for threat, and whenever we feel we are threatened, we try to react, or we react automatically because of the way we're programmed, and that although taking all the perspectives and connecting with different people really helps us to have multi-perspective view of the world. It is also to some extent making it more difficult to make decisions, because we can feel the needs of all those people, but nevertheless it can help us. And we had at the end a look at the inner team to have a tool to integrate our internal or inner plurality. And so I think learning is connecting us on the one hand with our ability to grow, but also because whenever we are learning, we are also facing something we do not know yet, maybe. And so it is also connecting us with our finitude. And often we feel that we have to overcome this, especially those vulnerable or imperfect parts. And although it is important that we grow together and that we strive for development, it is also, I think, important with regards to self-leadership that we try to embrace these more vulnerable parts within us. And with this said, I would really like to thank you for your attention, and come back Um, Thank you so much. Also to the question, Gunther, I think it was Gunther who asked, how can we practice our inner leader every day? I think whenever you face a situation or a decision that is challenging, it is worth to note that question or decision or situation that is challenging down, and then to map these different characters. When there is a day when you do not have a challenge, then maybe you can leave the practice out for one day. But that would be one recommendation I could make. And thank you so much for joining today. And thank you so much for taking part in the session. It was really making me nervous that I couldn't see you, but I really enjoyed that you were there and that you were listening. Thank you so much. And with that said, I head over for the closing to Dee again.
Thank you, Meike, and thank you all for joining us today. We hope you find the session on self-leadership insightful and inspiring. A big thank you to you, Meike, for sharing all your valuable knowledge. Thanks again also for everybody who engaged in this session. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow on our next session with Lateral Leadership with Gunther Fürstberger. So have a great day. I will close this session in a minute for everybody.
Thank you.